Okay, going over the warm-up. First, we need to factor the denominator. I'm going to write it nice and big right here. 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. All of today's lesson, we're going to be using the method called slide and divide to factor everything today. Okay, if you forgot how to do this, please Google it or look at YouTube. Okay, this is a review. So we're going to factor this using the slide and divide method. What you do is you multiply the A value by the C value. So guys, this is A, B, and C. So guys, what is 2 times negative 3? Good. My B value goes down here. Two numbers that multiply to give me negative 6 is 6 and negative 1. 6 minus 1 will give me 5. So if you multiply them, I'll get negative 6. If you add them, I'll get 5. Okay, so that means these are my factors, x plus 6 and x minus 1. Now, we did the sliding in the beginning where we slid the 2 to the negative 3 and multiplied them. Now we're going to divide. So I'm going to divide by this A value right here. I'm going to divide this number by 2 and this number by 2. Let's simplify. What is 6 divided by 2? So this will become x plus 3. This 1/2 is already simplified. I'm going to bring the denominator to the front. So this will become 2x minus 1. Let me write it prettier so that it's not all scrunched up. This will become 2x minus 1. Okay, so we factored the denominator. What this looks like now is we have x plus 3 in the numerator and the factored form x plus 3 times 2x minus 1. Okay, so factoring was the first part. Now it's all done. Do you guys see which factors we have in common? Yes. X plus 3's cancel. So what I'm left with is a 1 in the numerator and then 2x minus 1 in the denominator. Okay, now if you remember from the last lesson, how to find the whole. What did we cross out? The plus 3's, right? So what's my answer? Negative 3. Remember, you take whatever we canceled out, which was x plus 3, you set it equal to 0 and solve. So we subtract 3 from both sides and we get x is negative 3. So that's what this value is. How do I find the y value of the whole? Yes, you plug in this negative 3 into what's left over. So I'll erase this x and put a negative 3 right there. So I will get 1 over 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Minus 1 is negative 7. So the y value is negative 1 over 7. So that is where your whole is. So this warm-up was a review of what we learned last lesson. It's also a review on how to do the slide and divide method. Okay? So let's go ahead and flip to the notes. All right. Rational functions like these are just fractions. Do you guys remember, can we have a 0 in the denominator? No, you can't have 0 in the denominator. Whatever x value gives you a 0 in the denominator is called the vertical asymptote. Asymptote. And these are the steps on how to find the vertical asymptotes. Step 1 is the hardest part. That's how to factor. Now, if you don't like the slide and divide methods, there's so many different methods on how to factor. I chose the easiest one, but if you don't think it's easy, Google another method. I don't mind if you do that one. Some people use a little box. Some people do grouping, but we have to know how to factor. So let's go ahead and do step one. We're going to factor both the numerator and the denominator. So let's work on the numerator first. So I need two numbers that will, first, what's 1 times -3? It's just -3. So whenever your x value is 1, you don't really have to do all the sliding and dividing. Okay, what were you going to say? Yep. -3 times 1 will give you the -3. -3 plus 1 is -2. Okay, so we factored the numerator. Your factors are x minus 3 and x plus 1. Now let's do the next one. Again, my a value is 1, so you don't really have to do the sliding and dividing. 1 times 6 is just 6. Your b value is -5. -3 times -2 is +6. -3 plus -2 is -5. So those are my factors. X minus 3 and x minus 2. Okay, that was the hardest part, is step 1, factoring. Once we're done factoring, what's step 2? Yep, cancel out the common terms. So step 2 is easy. Those match, cross them out. Step 3, set denominator to 0 and solve. This is the denominator down here. Set it equal to 0 and solve. So guys, what should I do to solve? Yep, add 2 to both sides. So what is x equal to? That's it. X equals 2. So what we found, guys, was the vertical asymptote. Last week, we learned that the asymptote looks like this, right? Your graph looks like this. It gets really close to these lines. Your vertical asymptote was here. Now with this problem, they're saying the vertical asymptote is at 2. So they scooted over. It's not here anymore. They scooted it over at 2. So this is where your asymptote is, at 2. That's what we're doing today. We're finding the vertical asymptote. Let's do the next example. Okay, step 1 is to factor. So the a value is 1, so we can just go straight to an eye chart. -10 and 3. I'll let you guys figure out what the two numbers have to be. Good. -2 times 5 is -10. If you add them, you'll get 3. Thank you, David. Okay, so the numerator can be x minus 2 and x plus 5. Okay, here. Is my a value 1? No, it's a -6. Okay, so let's, before we even start, since my a value is 1, it's not as easy as this one. We just go straight to the eye chart. What can I divide all of these by? Everyone said 2, not just 2. Good. If this leading number is negative, we must divide by a negative. So -2 is on the outside. -6 divided by -2 is +3. 2 negatives make a positive. 16 and -2, when you divide them, -8, good. -8 divided by -2, +4. Thank you, David. All right, so this is what the denominator looks like. Now I can do my eye chart. What is my a value? Yes, this is my a value. This is b, this is c. Since my a value is not 1, we're going to have to do the sliding and dividing. So 3 times 4 is 12. Your b value is -8. Can y'all come up with two numbers that will multiply to 12 but add to -8? Good. Thank you, Blaine. -6 times -2 is 12. -6 and a -2 is -8. So those work. So we're not done. -2's on the outside, and my factors are x minus 6, and x minus 2. This method is called slide and divide method. You have to divide at the end. Do you guys know what I'm going to divide by? The a value. Oh, yeah. 3. So we're going to divide by 3. And once we simplify, we'll be done. Negative 2 is still on the outside. 6 divided by 3 is 2. This is already simplified, so bring the 3 to the front. This will be 3x minus 2. Okay, so these are your factors. I'm going to put that down here. Negative 2 times x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. Okay, the first step is the hardest, factoring. Now that we factored everything, we can go ahead and move on. Do y'all see what will cancel? Yes. That cancels with that. Now you just set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. So the denominator is all of this. So I'll have negative 2, 3x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, now we're going to solve. I just set the denominator equal to 0. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. So I'll have 3x minus 2 equals 0. 0 divided by anything is just 0. Now what do I do to continue solving? Thank you, good. So I have 3x equals 2. What's my final step? Thank you. Divide by 3. This is my answer. So that's where your asymptote is. At 2/3 is about, if this is 1, 2/3 is about right here. So here's your asymptote. And this is what your graph would look like. No, we don't have to do anything with this. You only set the denominator equal to 0. Good question. Everyone has that question. All right, next example. All right, we have to factor. I want you guys to try. I'm going to pause here and let you guys try. I'll walk around. Okay, y'all look like y'all were off to a good start. We're supposed to do 2 times negative 9, which is negative 18. And then you want to add to give you 3. Aurelie had 6 and negative 3. Good. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. 6 minus 3 is 3. So those should be your two numbers. So I'll have x plus 6 and x minus 3. We are not done factoring. What should I be doing next? Yes, good. Divide by 2. So guys, let's simplify this. What is 6 divided by 2? 3. That's the first factor. This is already simplified. So bring the 2 to the front. This will be 2x minus 3. Now we're factored. So I'm going to write what I have. X plus 3 is still the same in the numerator, but we rewrote the denominator into these factors. So I'm going to put that here. Okay, step 1 is the hardest part, factoring, okay? Now that we're done factoring, we're going to cancel out what's in common and set the denominator equal to 0. So did you guys solve? What did we do first? Good, add 3. So we get 2x equals 3. Then you divide by 2. So that's your answer. X is equal to 3/2. That's where your asymptote is. All right, let's move to the next example. Next example. Okay. So guys, am I going to do an eye chart here or not? Why? Yep, because we have a squared and we have a number. So I need negative 36. My middle term, I don't have one, so we're putting 0. 6. Thank you, Fu. Yep, 6 and negative 6. 6 times -6 is -36. 6 minus 6 is 0. So those are my factors. I'll have x plus 6 and x minus 6. The hard part's over. That cancels out. Set this equal to 0. So what's your answer? X equals 6. If you don't know how I got x equals 6, we just add 6 to both sides. So x is equal to 0 plus 6. Okay? That's it. All right, next example. Let's look. Do I do an eye chart here? Why not? Right, there is not a squared right here. So we're not going to do an eye chart. So can we divide both of these by something? -5. So -5 is on the outside. What's left over? Plus 6. Yes, -30 divided by a -5 will give you a positive 6. Does anything cancel out, guys? No? Okay. Nothing canceled out. Oh. Nothing canceled out. So we just set this equal to 0 and solve. So we can divide by -5. We'll get x plus 6 equals 0. So subtract 6, x is -6. Also, guys, since nothing canceled out, you can go directly here too. The original problem has -5x minus 30. You can just set this straight to 0 since nothing canceled. And you can add 30, add 30. So -5x equals 30. If you divide by -5, you'll get x is -6. So nothing canceled out. You can just do it directly. All right, next example. Am I going to do an eye chart for the denominator? No. Why not, Blaine? Good, because there's not a C value. I just have A and B. I need A and C in order to do an eye chart. Okay? So, guys, what can both of these be divided by? -2. What else? X. They can both be divided by a -2x. So -2x is on the outside. The -2's cancel. The x's cancel. What's left over? X plus 2. Okay. I have x squared minus 2 on the top. -2x. X plus 2 on the bottom. Okay, the reason why I didn't do an eye chart for this one is because I can't. Can y'all think of two numbers that multiply to -2? 1 and -2. Does that add to 0? No. What about -1 and +2? Do those add to 0? Okay, it didn't work. That's why I just left it like that. Okay. All right, guys. When you have two different x's in the denominator, you have this part and you have this part, we're going to set them both equal to 0 and we'll solve. So set this part equal to 0, solve for x. How do I solve for x? Good. Divide it by -2. And 0 divided by anything is just 0. That is one of your answers. Next, we're going to solve for x here. So x plus 2 equal it to 0. X is equal to -2. So you have two answers. When you have two different x's in your denominator, you'll have two different answers instead of one like we had previously. Please star this question. That's a special case that we haven't seen yet. When you have two different x's, you're going to have two different answers. Set them both equal to 0. All right, guys, you try the last one. You guys try the very last one on your page. Try this one. Again, the numerator will not work. You can't think of two numbers that add to zero, multiply to 2 and add to 0. So keep the numerator the same. You guys figure out what the denominator should be. Good, guys. Y'all are doing good. So what you should have done was divide both of these by 8x. So 8x is on the outside. 8's cancel, x's cancel. I'm left with x plus 3. That's what goes over here. 8x times x plus 3. Set this one equal to 0 and solve. I'm going to divide both sides by 8. So x is equal to 0. That's one of your answers. The other one, x plus 3, set it equal to 0. Subtract 3 from both sides. Your answer is -3. So these are your two vertical asymptotes. Wait, y'all are getting confused what to do here. Only when you have an x and another x will you have two answers, okay? That is different from what you have on your paper. Can you read the second problem, David?
X minus 4
-4x minus 16. This problem is different. We'll divide both of these by -4. So -4 is on the outside. That cancels. What am I left with? X. Negative is positive. 4. Okay, so we'll rewrite this as x minus 4 is still there. But the denominator, I'm going to write it as -4 over x plus 4. Do we have two separate x's? No. So we're only going to have one answer. The difference between this problem and this problem, do y'all notice the x's? I have two x's, so I'm going to have two answers. Here, I just have one x, okay? So I'm just going to equal this to 0, divide by -4. I get x plus 4 equals 0. And then you subtract 4, x is -4. I just have one answer. Okay?